it's funny because there's a lot of these questions in religion that like somebody even asked you a question on his Instagram story the other day that was like, explain to me how God can both play like a passive and active role in your life while you still have free will. And Stu just responded like, dude, this is a fucking Instagram like question story. Like this is a master's level thesis like for response that you're asking me to do on Instagram. Like I can't,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So that's like, and even the stuff that you guys kind of talked about, it's like you could literally spend a semester of a college course talking about those things. But like I
Uh-huh.
think I mean we'll talk about this too in a second, but like the greater takeaways are pretty universal. And even look like other religions, like there's a lot of overlap in things that just make people less shitty human beings
Hmm.
if they have some sort of religion.
Right.
Not that necessarily like I'm gonna be like, oh, you're a fucking idiot for being agnostic, you know,
Right.
or even atheist, and you just believe like there's nothing out there, you know, because like well,
Mm.
that's the difference, right? Atheist is like there is nothing. Agnostic is like I don't know.
Right. Well, and yeah, and part of me says, what's the difference? Other than when you're looking
Yeah,
at things like a North Star, right? It's like, what am I using for a compass to guide me through the world? And that's one of the utilities I do see in religion. Um, if you question your North Star or don't have some predetermined values, how do you make difficult decisions in difficult times when you're stressed? Fair enough. You
yeah,
know, because who's we're just all fucking dumbasses walking around, right? So for me to say I know best, it's like I know I don't know best. So I could see how wanting someone else's opinion in the form of a book or a Bible or whatever. Yeah, okay. Like I can see how that's helpful.
yeah. And it's like for the same reason that we read a lot of other books, right? Like people read self help books, people read philosophy. Like there's just like lessons to be learned
Hmm.
that apply to life, and they're separable from religion. You know, it's not binary. Like it has to be like this only ties to religion. Like no, it's just like a value of life. And like if you're lucky enough to be raised in a good family with good role models and stuff, these are things that you can learn without reading. But also like a lot of people don't really have that in their life. So like maybe getting
Yeah,
some perspective from reading, and you know, it could be the Bible, it could be Mark Manson, it could be the Quran, like it could be you know
yeah,
whatever you want to choose to be. Like there's life lessons all around us, especially in literature. It doesn't have to be you know like religious per se. And then the whole like North Star thing too gets into you know like God as a definition. Like to me, like
yeah.
God is you know like a supreme creator.
Mm.
Like the reason why we're here for other people, you know, so that could be like a monotheistic Christian, Jewish, Islamic God, whatever. Or it could just be like I'm an agnostic. I'm not sure. I think there is some sort of supreme being. I have no idea what it is. There could not be. I'm not going to necessarily associate this with one thing, but like there's probably something greater than me. I'm insignificant. Like this seems like it couldn't be random, but I don't know.
Mm.
Or it could be like I have no meaning in life. I can't even necessarily comprehend, you know, my insignificance or that there could be a supreme creator. And what's going to give me value is some of the things you mentioned, like drugs or porn or gambling, or even like narcissism, like people making themselves God,
Mm.
right? Like it's their North Star are things that are not what we would consider healthy, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's where I think uh the words that you use matter, right? Making yourself God is different than seeing God in ourselves, right? And
Yeah, for
seeing,
sure.
and so the distinction there gets to be a fine line sometimes, and as you said, with narcissism and different things. But it's like I do believe we are all God. That is not to say I am God. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yeah. And
Yeah.
like, again, that's something that I think you and Stu talked about a lot was like a lot of these can be like a lot of these questions and statements and arguments can quickly become semantical.
Yeah.
And it's a lot like politics when you start getting super secular with things. It's
Yeah.
like my opinion on a lot of this stuff is not black and white. I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody who thinks differently from me. I'm not going to be a judging person. And I think that's like a lot of why like you know, accepting religion for a lot of people is tough as well.
Mm.
Is because there's a lot of like very hypocritical people within all of the main religions.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of like weird questions to answer, you know. So there's a bit of a barrier to entry if you're somebody who's a pragmatic person. Like if you
Right.
like to ask questions, and there's like not to compare religion to politics again, but like the average voter is not very intelligent. If you
Hmm.
look at who votes in the U.S., And I'm not saying the average person who believes in God is not intelligent, because clearly like Stu is very smart.
Yeah.
I would like to think I'm above average intelligence. But if you're a less pragmatic person, it's a lot easier to believe in whatever you think God is, which is, you ever read any like Mark Manson stuff?
No, I haven't read any of his stuff.
Okay, he has like which I'm not typically a self-help book guy, but I read in college, Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And he has a chapter in there. It's like how to start a cult. And it talks about like human psychology and how easy it is to create something similar to God for people to follow, to worship.
Mm,
There's a community aspect to it as well. And it's just an interesting conversation. The whole, what is God to me versus what can God be? Is God a deity? Is it something that is just the central point of your life? You know,
mm.
I know what is your personal definition? And you say God is in all of us, but like, what is?
Well, for me, I would say I don't know the answer to that question. My perception is that in a religious lens, God is generally a source of hope. And
Uh-huh.
that's actually a conversation I had last week, but and actually with Stu as well. I've never been in a position where I have found myself feeling hopeless. And so I have never found myself wondering, how do I get through this? Or how is this possible? Or thinking I can't do this, etc. And those are the lenses that I see most people finding themselves to religion when they don't come from a religious background already, right? And so
Hmm.
whether it's after addiction, like drugs and drinking, or you live as a degenerate for X amount of time and then you just start to feel bad about it. It's like, I don't have the power to change, and so I need something to help me change. There's God. It's like, I don't believe that to be true. I have never found myself in that situation, and I've never felt like that. So like, I see God as a utility from a religious perspective. I don't know how I interface with that utility yet. And so that's one of the reasons I want to talk to Stu. And I'm actually
Yeah, yeah,
reaching out to his old pastor. Like, I'd love to. I am going to continue to pull this thread to see. It's like, I don't know how this integrates to me. It's very intriguing, but I've never experienced those things that most people they describe, right? Even a lot of pastors. What was your past? Well, I was a biker, or I was an alcoholic, or this and that and whatever. And now I found Christ and it's improved my life in every way. Awesome. Uh, but what I hear is you didn't think you had the power to be a better person. And so God has now provided that to you. I don't like that. It's like, no, that was in you the whole time. You just started making better choices, right? You're
yeah, yeah.
period.
Well, that gets into the whole conversation of like, predestination versus free will. And that was something I think
Yep.
Stu covered nicely. Which is about like, well, maybe you're just kind of like a track that you're on, and you have the ability to kind of, get off here and get back on here,
Hmm.
or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of what, getting into religion from a non-religious background, even if you do grow up religious, there's a lot of a lot of religion, other than like the, turning over the big rocks. It leaves a lot of questions that are hard to answer,
Hmm.
and not like impossible to answer, but like it makes you ask tough questions, and those tough questions make you feel weird. And generally, we don't like to be uncomfortable as human beings.
Sure.
Like if you had somebody on, and you didn't give them any questions ahead of time, and you're just like, so how do you feel about death? Like
Uh-huh.
the majority of people would be like, oh, wait, what? I don't know. Like I need time to think about this. You
Right.
know what I mean? Or like, what's your definition of God? Or are you religious? People get really like, I don't know. I don't think about it, which is actually a good point too. Because so in 2020 during COVID, I decided to read this psychology book that I heard was like one of the best. It's called The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker.
Okay.
It's an absolute bitch to read. It's so laborious to get through, but I was like, fuck it. I have all the time in the world. I'll read through this. And so that's kind of one of his arguments. And don't quote me directly, because this is a very difficult book to read that I read 4 years ago. But like part of the synopsis is like, we kind of need religion as human beings, and not religion as in like Christianity, Judaism, whatever. Like we just need something in our lives to be whatever we determine God to be, right? We need some sort of central focus point. Um, because if we lived life with constant anxiety and fear of death, then we would not be productive human beings.
Mhm.
And I think part of his argument is that we actually do live most of life ignoring the fact that we are going to die. Like that is inevitable. Like to my knowledge, nobody has yet not died ever.
Right.
Right? Like we can accept that human beings we're going to die. And that's like that's even a thing that a lot of people don't think about like ever, until they have to.
Well,
It's
and that's, I
uncomfortable to
think,
think about.
and they don't have any, and that's another part of life I've never experienced either. As a teenager, it's always described, or not always, but often described as, I have a sense of invincibility, or I thought I was never going to die, or whatever. It's like, I have never experienced that in my life. I've known, I've been told I was going to die for longer than I was ever told I was ever going to live. And so it just doesn't feel foreign to me. Does it sound exciting to die? No, I'm not looking forward to it. Trying to do a
Right.
bunch of stuff to not have that happen. But that was brought into my awareness at 15 months old. So, like, I don't have any of this preconceived notion that it's not coming for me. It's like, oh
Hmm.
no, it's fucking coming for sure. And I've been so far batting 100, right? But that will change at some point, and that's fine, right? Because it's how we're all going out.
Right. And yeah, I think it's an uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people because
100%.
you feel not like necessarily guilty, but like when you start talking about death, like it's normal to get anxious.
Mm.
Like even for you, having grown up at, how old were you when you had your first major surgery?
Like super major, it was on my 8th birthday.
On your eighth birthday. So
Mhm.
since your eighth birthday, like you've probably known like, okay, shit could go bad really quickly at some point or another,
I
right? Like
literally,
that.
yeah, at 17 months old, my parents were told I wasn't going to see three. So that was the start of life.
Yeah, right, exactly. So like for you, like death has been present. For a lot of people, they think about death and they start getting anxious and they're like, oh man, I don't want to be anxious about this at all. Like I
Yeah.
shouldn't feel this way. I'm gonna stop thinking about it. But like in reality, like it's okay to be anxious about it, have some
Mhm.
anxiety about it. That's normal. That's literally human psychology.
Yeah.
Like we
It's
are
fuel to stay
programmed to
alive.
live.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's it's in our DNA. So like if we can kind of lean into that and then ask ourselves more questions and find whatever makes us comfortable, whatever makes us more productive human beings, you know, you could talk about things like, fulfilling your potential or leaving a legacy or whatever have you, building a
Mhm.
family, having loving relationships, etc. Whatever helps you do that the best. Like
Yeah.
it's probably going to serve a greater benefit to ask yourself some of those harder questions to find, whatever God is in your life.
Yeah. No, and what I hear again is utility. It's like, what
Yeah.
utility is this serving for me in my life? And I don't say that in a negative context at all. It's like, if you're looking for utility, that seems like a good one to choose, right? Like, let's aim at God. Yeah. Like, what else are you going to aim at? Because your shitty decisions? No, that's poor. That doesn't seem like a good long-term strategy to stay alive. And especially, I mean, we're kind of just going in circles around the ideas, but speaking about like the gym things and the distractions and the addictions, it's like you can look at drugs, you can look at porn, you can look at the gym or gambling or all the above, or you can insert religion here and try to stay away from most of those things, right? Like,
Mhm.
okay, well, that seems like a positive net impact of the whole system here, especially when we're talking about terms of life, um, a fulfilled life, I should say, whatever that is for you.
Yeah. And I think the reason why utility might get a bad rap the way you would say it, like I don't get offended by you saying that.
Hmm.
I could see somebody like, getting upset about that, but like I think it's only another connotation that you're saying utility is like a crutch for
Yeah,
other
sure.
things, which is something I heard on one of your other podcasts. But like, and those are one of the issues that you have with religion, right? It's like I'm a piece of shit drug addict and I need this to be a better person. It's like no, you
Right.
could probably be a better person if you just believed in yourself. Yeah,
Right.
and
Exactly.
not to simplify it that much because it's not it's not so black and white, but none of these
Yeah.
things are. But anyways, it's like yeah, it's probably like I can the two things can be true. I can
Mhm.
accept that there is a greater power or greater purpose than me, and I can also accept at the same time that I have, self responsibility. Like I am responsible for my own actions, and I need to do shit to make things happen,
Yep.
right? And you probably need a good balance of both those things in your life.
Absolutely. And go back to North Star, I think that that's one of the reasons why. Well, and I guess where it falls apart for me is when you get into things like war. Like as soon as you
Mhm.
start trying to kill somebody else because you have a different religion, like you're losing me, bro. Like I'm not on board with, well, my book says this and your book says that, and so I'm going to take over your country and fucking fuck you. Like,
Yeah, I'm not either. And honestly, like I love watching like World War One and World War Two stuff, which isn't really like necessarily a religion thing. We can talk about,
right.
the Aryan race, World War Two, whatever. But for me, it's like, holy shit, like this is terrible. Like
Yeah.
it makes you lose like faith in humanity. But when I think about that, like that's faith in humanity. It's not necessarily faith in religion or my God. But yeah, anyways, my kind of take on that is like, yeah, humans can suck. Like humans can be really good and humans can be really bad. And if we do
Mhm.
have free will, then like that's not us, um, fighting as God, right?
Mhm.
Like I can do things, and maybe this is a bad analogy, but like you can be the CEO of a company, and some of your employees can do some really fucked up things in your image, but you don't necessarily condone that, right? Like
Mhm.
we have the ability to do things that are bad without it being God's will per se.
Absolutely. Well, and that's as Stu talked about with the am I replacing God, right? Or am I standing in place of God? And that's where I get into the politics things too. I feel like politics and religion outside of their original context are used almost interchangeably,
Mhm.
right? In the sense of do as I say, not as I do, and I'm telling you because I'm the boss, right? You can do that through a religious lens, you can do that through a political lens, whether that's a dictatorship or a democracy that is kind of a dictatorship sometimes too, whatever that is. But I feel like it just gets removed from its original intention and purpose, and that's where shit starts to fall apart. But on a large scale in today's world, the original context is almost lost, right? It's like this isn't about, you know, taking resources from another place or, trying to convert your neighbor. It's like what happened to treat your neighbor as you treat yourself, right? Like if you're going to apply
Mhm.
that broadly, how could you ever go to war because somebody else believes in a different God? Like it, and that's where it
Yeah,
falls apart for me. I'm like, that's religion just there's holes in it. And that's part of the piece I want to talk to, whether it's a pastor or whoever. It's like, how does this all work on your level of religion? Because this is where it falls apart for me. And I'm just a dummy walking around the world. Like I don't claim to know anything, but I'd love to hear the answers, right? Like, where do you go with that?
yeah. I think just where I go with that is like humans have free will,
Yes.
and you don't have to even be religious to have an idea of good and evil or good or
Right.
bad per se. Again, most of these things lie on a spectrum. It's hard to make a lot of these things necessarily good or bad. But yeah, like clearly going to war because somebody doesn't agree with you, on like who your God is, and killing them, like that's probably not what God wants.
Hmm.
And I don't think there's any religious text that necessarily dictate that. So I think that's where like, okay, like humans made this decision, right?
Hmm.
This is human nature. And you could get into again human psychology of like maybe we have something in us that makes us want to go to war or makes us want to fight. Or more importantly, it makes us tribal in nature,
Yeah.
right? There's a tribal aspect to human psychology. And again, it's human, right? So humans have a tribal nature. People disagree with us, we hate them. And that could be religion, it could be Democrat versus Republican, it could be like the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Buffalo Bills, or a better rival than that, right? But
Right.
it could be sports, it could be politics, it could be religion. This is like a human thing, right?
Mhm. I really wonder too, though, this is kind of in a whole different leg of things. If that's not a way for us to keep ourselves from progressing past a certain point, right? Because if we all play together nicely, what are the potential outcomes of that, right? What are the things that we could accomplish if we weren't fighting? And that's one of the reasons I dislike about politics and religion both is there's this depiction of multiple sides and you need to choose one, and now you're playing on that team. And I'm just like, I don't like that system. I don't like the structure of it's you versus us versus them, and there's a winner on top of this game. It's like, well, what if
Yeah,
we're all on the same team and the system is the issue, right? The fact that someone is telling you that there needs to be two or three or whatever amount of teams, and then we need to disagree on stuff. It's like that to me is broken. And so I don't want to play that game. What I want to do is help my team, your team, that team all thrive. And what does that world look like? That to me, that's the impact we can have on how we can change the world and create a better place. Like if you're thriving and I'm thriving, I don't fucking care what team you're on. Let's go.
yeah, I couldn't have said any better. And honestly, like this sort of thought process, which you're speaking to right now, you could cross apply to any aspect of life. Like this is the stuff that I talk about with training. A
Right.
lot of things just aren't, they simply are not black and white. As much as you want to make this binary, like, yes, no, good, bad, black, white, it's just not.
Hmm.
Probably a sliding scale of things in here. But that doesn't, get your attention. Get your attention
Right.
is like, oh, here's two tribes, here's two answers. I belong to this tribe. I have these people with me that support me. Like fuck yeah, Republican, Democrat, hip
Yeah.
thrust, squat, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever you want to get into. So I
It's
think
identity
like,
based.
yeah, it's identity based.
Mhm.
And whether it's politics, sports, training, your favorite beer, I don't know. It can literally be anything.
Yeah. Well, okay. So to go full back around to how I would generally start a conversation on a podcast, identity as the theme. How do you describe yourself to a room full of people who don't know you?
Yeah, that's a super interesting question because that's something I've always been bad at,
Hmm.
like introducing myself. What do I do? Um, Especially because of what I do. I mean, there's sort of like a stigma around it, like, oh, personal trainer. Like, oh, this nerd's fucking working over at, Anytime Fitness, making no money. Like, this guy's a
Right.
hack, whatever. So like for the longest time, I would tell people, if I was out with like friends of friends, people who didn't really know me very well, and they asked what I did, especially if there's a few drinks involved, I would tell them that I was a trainer at the DC Zoo. Like I train
Sure.
animals, and they
Yep.
believe me. And people are gullible as shit. That's kind of like what my go-to would be.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, dude, like that's such an interesting question. I think it's a question that I ask myself every day. If we were to get into like the weeds of it, like who am I?
Yeah, let's go.
Uh, well, okay, how about like more background on me,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
then we'll kind of talk
First,
about. I
first.
think the narrative of the direction that we're going to go is going to describe who I am as a person and get
Right.
into more of like my values and whatnot. Um, yeah, I went to college with William Mary, played football there, played sports all the way up through college. I towards so actually getting into this career, I went to school for I thought maybe I wanted to do pre-med. I realized very quickly I was too stupid for that. Or I didn't at least have the capacity to study as much as I needed
Right.
to do well in all those classes. So I decided my first 2 years, okay, I'll do a business major. Okay, I went to classes for business, econ, all that boring stuff. I was terrible at it too. Um, the day that so at the college I went to, you don't declare your major until the last day of your sophomore year. So you're there for basically half your time before you declare your major. And my last day, I went and met with my advisor, and they're like, "Dude, what the hell are you doing? Like, you haven't taken half the classes you need. Your grades in these classes are good enough." And I literally walked out, and I just on the form you have to declare your major. I wrote down kinesiology.
Hmm.
I always loved training, playing sports. I got really into the weeds of like reading things on bodybuilding.com, trying to figure out how to make myself the best athlete, grow muscle, optimize performance, etc. And I was like, fuck it. I'm right. I know I love this. I'm gonna write this down and I'm gonna figure this out later. I called my parents, I told them what I did, and they're like, what the fuck are you doing? What are you gonna do with that? Like, I'll go to PT school, I'll do something productive, I'll figure it out. Uh like, eventually like that's the kind of route that I went. I started interning in a PT clinic towards the end of college, started applying for PT schools. And I realized pretty quickly like I didn't necessarily love doing that. I really
Hmm.
like the training side of things. But to me, it's like, okay, being a trainer, I can't make an income to do the things that I love. I love to travel, you know, I like to have like nice experiences, whatever you're going to go with that. You know, Making $10 an hour probably isn't going to cut that for a lot of things. So,
Yep.
oh, PT, physical therapist, whatever, that's going to be a good pay. And I was always told, like only the one like top 1% of trainers make like an adequate income. Which is not true. if you try, you're going to do well in this profession, regardless of how competent you are.
Right.
If you just try, like you can do pretty well. But anyways, started applying to PT schools, got rejected to all of them, and I was like, okay, fuck it. Like this was right when COVID happened, and I
Sure.
actually started working my senior year of school. I started working in the gym as a front desk manager, or not even manager, sorry, just front desk employee. And they had training spots open. I had my training certification, so I started applying at the gym. Talked to the manager, they wouldn't hire me. Like literally no explanation. I applied, they never acknowledged it. I had to ask them about it like 2 weeks later. They just wouldn't
Right.
acknowledge the fact that I wanted to work as a trainer there. So I applied to like another one across the street, and I got interviewed within a day. I went and interviewed with them, got the job, and then it was like right before spring break. Spring break happened, COVID, gym shut down. I get a text from the guy, "Hey man, you can't work. Like the gym shut down." Fuck.
Yeah.
Okay, so I graduate. I move home. Okay, I guess I'll start like training people in my garage. Like I'm pretty connected with the high school kids in the area still. You know, my high school I went to. So I'm living at home with my dad. I have two kids I train in my garage, and that's just how I started my business. Okay, like I'll figure this out, I guess. I applied to Anytime Fitness, got rejected. I think they wouldn't hire me because I went to a pretty good school, and that was like odd for them to have somebody applying to work there. I don't know.
Right.
So I got rejected. So the first two jobs I applied to, the trainer, or sorry, the first three, I guess. One of them I worked at the place and they ignored me. The second place I got the job, but then COVID happened because the gym shut down. And then the third place, once gyms opened back up, they rejected my application.
Mm-hmm. Because
So I literally
you
started.
came from a good school, that's why.
I don't know. I knew some. I had some buddies that worked there, and they said the manager didn't like me because I had already started my Instagram by that point. So
Mm,
I already started my business in my, training kids in my garage, started posting, and they saw my Instagram, and apparently they didn't like that I was like, I seemed intelligent, I guess.
sure.
Because for some reason they didn't want intelligent trainers, for whatever that's worth. Anyways, that's kind of how I got started. I was like, okay, like finally, I guess I'm gonna do this, even though I've been told not to do this. Like I didn't feel like my family is necessarily like super supportive of it,
Mm,
and because of the stigma around like working a bottom tier service job. Um, but yeah, that's how I started, and within like 6 months, I got a job managing a sports performance gym, and I was training clients on there's it was connected to a physical therapy clinic, and it was the physical therapy clinic that I worked in as an intern. I got a
oh,
job back there, so I was training people in a post rehab setting, and I was also training like up to 80 athletes in a month, doing all their
wow.
programs for them. So it was
Yeah,
like, yeah,
wow.
the thick experience. I got to train like literally everybody, and I got a lot of cool experience. And that's before I moved up here. That was kind of like my entrance to training. I was like, okay, like I believed in myself, but I didn't feel like the world believed in me. You know what I mean? Like I felt like I was kind of going against the grain.
Yep.
Uh, which I give advice to other people now who are in similar positions. Like I always try to encourage them, like you can do this. Like it's not that it's not hard. Like it's hard work, but like it's doable. It's not close to impossible.
Right. Well, and even for context too, like the online thing really only took off not even 4 years ago, right? Pre-COVID, online training was a thing, hands down. But it's a whole different beast than it was then, now, right? So the
Yeah,
landscape's changed, how it works has changed. Everybody, even people that don't have any kind of certifications, are looking to be trainers. It's like the barrier to entry is almost too low now, it seems. And so
yeah.
then
The
it's kind
barrier
of
to
a super
entry is
saturated market.
yeah. It's like can you do you have an iPhone that you can put Instagram on?
Yeah.
And can you figure out how to work a Linktree? Those are like, and can you download WhatsApp? Those are like the three qualifications for being an online coach.
Yeah.
Nothing else. No one asked for your training insurance. Nobody asked for
No.
what certifications you had or where you went to school or whatever. Not that you necessarily can get a lot of clients doing that, but you can have a large following already for other reasons, and you can start being a trainer and make a lot of
Yep.
money.
Well, because people don't care about any of that shit. They care about results. And that's with it pretty much any kind of coaching, really. I don't think people care about what letters you have involved in your name. To go back to identity, right? They care about one, who you are, and do they like you? And then two, am I getting the result from this that I'm looking for? And really, it's not even necessarily about the result. It's about the belief that the result is coming,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
And I
And
think a lot
that's,
of people,
no, go ahead.
I think a lot of people struggle with delayed gratification just in general.
Yep.
Like they aren't patient, or they expect things to come quicker than they actually should.
Right. Well, and it's funny because it's all perception based, other than like objective numbers like a scale weight, right? It's more about the things, and that's in sales, but even just in application, how do your clothes fit, right? Do you have energy day to day? Do you wake up feeling like a bag of shit? Do you go to bed feeling like a bag of shit? Like these are more tangible than a scale number because it's like, I don't care if I'm 200 pounds or 180 pounds. What I care about is that at 200 pounds, I generally have trouble breathing. I don't like that. So
Right.
maybe I don't want to be 200 pounds, but I don't give a shit how much I weigh. I care about how I feel during the day, right? And then my ability to sleep. But I feel like that's more common with people in terms of who am I looking for help? It's like, well, what do they know? Said another way, do I like them really? Because people will stay on with you for long amounts of time, even if you've already got the result for them and with them. Like, I just fucking like this guy. So I'm going to continue interacting because I like being around him. I like his energy. I like his influence. I like his thought process, etc.
Yeah, that's a huge part of training. That's what I say a lot. I'm like, you cannot be the best trainer, and especially like starting out too, if you're not very confident in yourself. Like if you just have like basic people skills
Yeah.
and you enjoy being around people and they like you, like you're gonna be good at what you do. Because
Mhm.
eventually, if you care, you're gonna figure out the training side of things.
Yeah.
And the
Exactly.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, it's so fucking simple, and yet it's people overcomplicate it, which then you get into things like self-sabotage and I don't know. I feel like, and as Jordan said to me before too, it's like the people who are asking questions of, am I good enough to do the thing that I want to do in the world? Those are the people that should be doing them. And the people who aren't asking those questions should not. But they are generally the ones who are, right? It's like you have no
Mhm.
prerequisites. You have no love or passion of working with people. You have no people skills or care of anything other than maybe making some money and narcissism enough to put yourself on the internet and not feel any type of shame. Those are the skills required to do a lot of things in today's world, and it's so fucking strange.
Yeah, it's literally just like the Dunning-Kruger effect personified.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, just to explain the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Oh, you mean explain the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Yeah.
Okay. So essentially, the Dunning-Kruger effect, you can look up like the actual study. I think there's like two Harvard guys who did the study, but essentially, it's like there's a chart of perceived confidence compared with compatibility or compatibility, competency, right? Confidence
Hmm.
versus competency, and essentially, those who are the most confident tend to be the least competent,
Yep.
and vice versa. Those who are very competent aren't very actually confident in their skills, right? And I believe it's kind of like a J-shaped curve, but it says a lot. It's because like you see on the internet, what guys we're talking about now is like there's people who they don't know what they don't know,
Right.
right?
Right.
So
And have,
there's
have
there's
no interest in figuring it out.
and no interest in figuring it out. Like they think they're the expert, they know everything, and that's just how it is, right?
Hmm.
And then there's
I'm
the
trying to
opposite.
think of
There's
the
people
guy's
who,
name that comes to mind too. It's his name, Bradley something or other. The topless guy all the time.
oh God,
Uh,
dude, I have no idea.
anyways,
I try to stay
doesn't
out.
matter.
Yeah, I try to stay off that corner of the internet. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a lot of the people, especially like I've been involved with the free trade community for a while. There's a lot of like super smart people in the community who have no self confidence, even though they're very
Sure.
competent. And I think it's like once you get kind of exposed to, a lot of this extra knowledge you don't necessarily need.
Hmm.
It's hard to necessarily like it's hard to kind of like bring it in and make it useful right away if you're trying to use everything, right? Like
Yeah.
it can be overwhelming. I think that's really what it is. People get overwhelmed. Now they know there's this whole new can of worms they've opened up and they don't know how to use it per se.
Right.
Right. So I
Well,
think that's where like these people are actually very competent, but they're very well aware of the amount of things that they probably don't know. And then they're
mhm.
like, well, oh fuck, do I need to know everything to take action? Like, no, just
And
like
how
just
to
start doing
distill it,
something. Yeah,
right?
yeah. But like my thing is just start. Like
Hmm.
if you have the ability to start something and you're not being like negligent, like I shouldn't just go get in a plane and try to fly it, right? Like there's obviously prerequisites there, but like if you have the ability to start something, just start it. Like you're gonna get better on the way. That goes
Hmm.
into like the whole paralysis by analysis thing. It's like at the point where like rubber has to hit the road, you got to like shut the fucking textbook and just go do the thing. Because you're also going to figure out better questions to ask. You're going to figure out what matters, figure out better questions to ask, and you're going to hone your skill set better by actually being bad at something, right? Or even just
Hmm.
being like mediocre, whatever. You're going to figure out how to get better faster by doing it.
Yeah. When you're the person that you are, it's, I think of it in terms of the horizon, right? You don't know what's even towards the horizon until you start to walk there. However, you never get to that same horizon. So you have this like always moving target that will perpetually always move, but it only moves when you do, right? And so you never get anywhere closer to it. However, the path that you walk unfolds itself as you walk, right? So it's, in my mental language, it's take a step. It's exactly what you're saying. Just fucking start. That's the
Mm-hmm.
first step of anything. And what does that look like? I don't know. Well, that's why I'm starting a community group in town here. I want to help people get past that first and early stage. Like, what is the thing? Let's identify it. What is one first step? I'm not telling you it's going to be the right one. I'm just telling you I fully support you. Let's fucking go. We'll check in next month, right? Like, it's not that hard. Do the thing, start the thing. Let's see. Because maybe you don't even like it, where you get into things all the
Yeah,
time. You think about things for 5 years. One day I'll do this thing. And then eventually you start, and you're like, you know what? I don't even fucking care. Like, this was a terrible waste of energy. I just wasted 5 years of my time and energy thinking about this thing that I don't even like. You never would find out if you didn't try. So
yeah,
try the thing. And if you don't like it, find something else.
yeah. I think a lot of people are just scared of failing or being wrong or being
Right.
bad. But like, I think it's just a matter of perspective, and we could talk about perspective from the standpoint of the kind of the moving horizon analogy you just used. The perspective that religion or whatever you feel God as gives you, like what is perspective, whatever. But if you look at the perspective around this, it's like I can look at it as like, oh, I'm going to fail a lot. That makes me a failure. Or you can
Hmm.
look at it like, oh, I'm not going to be great at this. I could fail a lot and I could learn very fast because of my failures.
Hmm.
Because now I know like what I need to get better at.
Right.
And if I didn't actually do it and fail, then I would never know.
And in that lens, I hear through expectation management. It's like people expect that it should be easier than it is. And that expectation comes from nowhere but our imagination. Right? It's like, when have things ever worked out perfectly in your life ever once? Like, can you identify, let's say, 3 times in your life where your plan has gone perfectly and shit just worked out? I like, probably not. And so having this expectation that when we start something new or when we're thinking about doing something, whatever, when shit gets hard, we have this feeling of it shouldn't be this hard. Like, where does that come from? It's not experience in the past. Like, you have no proof of that. Just fucking get over it and change your expectation. If you expect it to be hard sometimes, then when it is, you're like, oh, this makes sense. I'm on doing the right things. It's supposed to be hard sometimes. Let's go.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's funny to me too, because like at least in my own personal experience, all of my biggest breakthroughs in my career or in life in general, relationships, whatever, they've all come at like after a pretty long period of just like eating shit or being in a bad place mentally or like suffering or having to be patient, however you want to view it,
Right.
right? Like, it's like I have to be patient for a long time. And like I think that kind of gets into what I forgot exactly you worded it earlier, but like belief that things will work out.
Mhm.
Right. But I think like sometimes like people just get like they can't handle the uncomfortability of like things just not being okay
Right.
or not going as planned, like and that but that's like the reality of things. It's like it's like sometimes that's just how it is.
Do you find like, I don't know where I'll pick up in the conversation earlier, but do you find that you feel anxiety often in that context? Like, I don't describe myself as an anxious person. Anxiety is a thing that happens at times, but like in terms of the things that you are doing in the world that you live in, do you encounter anxiety on a regular basis?
Yeah, I would say it's something that I deal with like pretty
Mhm.
regularly, not to an extreme degree.
Yep.
A lot of it to me is balancing my expectations for my future self, like the direction I want to go with where I currently am and how and the not the direction, but the magnitude per se of where I'm at. I
Mm,
always think you can imagine like people see progress in like a straight line. In a lot of cases, like stair steps,
yep.
right? And you can look at it where there's a point where you're zigzagging and you're below the curve. So if I went from A to B and A to B was me starting my business to me now, there's plenty of points before I had a massive breakthrough where I was below that curve,
Yep.
right? So now I'm already getting sidetracked and forgetting the original question.
Anxiety, really. Like
Yeah,
I don't.
sorry. So yeah, anxiety. So yeah, I would say in that regard, it's giving myself perspective. Like okay, like even though this isn't necessarily where I want to be right now, if I view myself versus where I was, you know, even 2 years ago, I'm like, oh shit. Like if I told myself 2 years ago that I'd be where I was right now, I'd be like, okay, I'm right on plan. Like I'm doing great.
Mm,
But again, it's kind of what you're saying with that horizon moves. Like as you see success or as you get new goals, like that horizon keeps moving, even if you moved as well. So you could be where the horizon was before, but now there's a new horizon you're looking at. So I think
yeah.
uh, a lot of that anxiety is more so just like pressure on myself to succeed in things that I think that I want to succeed in.
Do you feel like that's a key piece in your ability to succeed in them?
Yeah, I think so. Like I don't
Yeah.
feel like I'm relying on external factors for motivation.
Right.
Like I just
Yeah.
have
Well, I
high
guess that's yeah.
expectations for
Said another way,
myself.
what's the fuel in the fire, right? Everybody's fuel is a little different, and yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I love what I do.
Yeah.
Like I want to do it at a high level. And to me, I don't know at what point like that stops going up. You know what I'm saying? Like I
Yeah.
starting my career, like my kind of thought process was I'm just gonna say yes to everything.
Hmm.
80-year-old just finished PT for a hip replacement. Fuck it, y'all figure it out. I have a PT right next to me. I can ask questions too.
Yep.
I'm lucky that I made friends with a lot of very successful, very smart other like personal trainers, coaches who can help me out when I have questions to ask. And you can cross apply that to training a woman through pregnancy or dealing with an ACL injury, or dealing with like a super obese client, right? Like there's a lot of these
Right.
things like, oh, maybe I haven't done this before yet, but I'll just lean into it. Like I'll figure it out, right? As
Yeah.
long as I'm not being negligent again. But I'll figure it out and I'll learn from that and I'll grow my skill set.
Your
And that maybe
confidence
will
in your
take me
ability.
somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Honestly, that kind of leads to the one question I actually did write down, in the sense that I definitely describe you as the top 1% of the top 1% of trainers, like in term of your actual training ability, your coaching skills that I mean, I only really know you remotely now specifically, but in person, your practical knowledge, right? Your textbook knowledge, you fucking know what's going on in the training world. And so I'm curious if you could describe some of the shifts that you've noticed in yourself as you've kind of continued your way towards that horizon, like as you continue to improve yourself in that space, what are some of the changes you've noticed in yourself?
I think a lot of it ends up coming not full circle per se, but kind of what we talked about earlier with things being not so binary.
Hmm.
Like once you begin to understand like some of the greater training principles or even like human psychology and like the name of the podcast is what practical honesty, like practicality, right?
Yeah.
Practicality of a lot of these things will trump a lot of what a textbook may say. Um, so yeah, I think a lot of my shift has been more like, okay, I think, oh, this is dumb. We shouldn't do this. It's like, oh, okay, well, maybe actually we should do this. This is okay. Here's the argument for this. Here's the argument against this. Well, let's apply this to the individual context of the person that we're coaching or the
Hmm.
person we're having a conversation with, right? Because there's a lot of external factors that are probably going to affect our answers to this. So I think analogy that I love is one that yeah, Killian, shout out Killian Hamilton. Killian gave me with he pulls up this like Picasso evolution of his like portrait, I think.
Hmm.
And as he ages, I think the first one is like as a teenager, and the last one is like in his like 70s or 80s or whatever. But it gets more abstract.
Hmm.
You see a lot of the same features of like what we deem as a face, lips, nose. I'm not as artsy as Killian, so I'm going to butcher this. But as it gets towards the end, you're like, what the fuck am I looking at? But you can kind of pick apart those pieces, and it's like, okay, like these are like the big principles that we're talking about here, right? Like if we just look at a basic portrait, that's like, center of mass, line of pool, uh, human psychology and basic coaching, whatever, right? And then as we get better at what we do and build our skill set and get more experience, we kind of learn how to use those things in more abstract ways, which I would view more so as like how we can apply these things for an individual without necessarily this being like an exact textbook answer,
Mhm.
right? But when we kind of factor in all these different factors from the individual, whether it be physically, whether it be psychologically, we can create something that works best for them. So, anyways, not to get too much on a tangent there, but like I think just the ability to be more, and maybe even abstract isn't the right word, but be more open about things not being, or being more open and realizing that things aren't binary.
Yeah,
Like
and
there's a
I
subjective quality to a lot of the things that are involved in
Mhm.
training. We just talked about the subjective quality of a lot of things in life, but as it pertains to training, like I think that's something that I've really been hammering lately.
Right. It's kind of that cross application from not only different areas of life, but within training. And well, honestly, into that one piece I thought about earlier, in terms of what, like your post about a binary all or nothing muscle recruitment and stuff like that, right? It's very similar to this, right? Some in one level of training, that's kind of your thought process, perhaps, is that this exercise is all or nothing. But in reality, it's like, is it really the best bang for your buck? And a lot of the time, the answer is sometimes, right? Because it depends on your nervous system and your sleep and your allostatic load. And, have you whatever XYZ yesterday, today? It's like, yeah, maybe today is the day we're going to sit you down on a bicep curl machine and we're just going to blast the biceps like a dummy. Perfect. Sometimes that's the best option. Sometimes it's
Yeah,
not, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Which, amen to biceps. Love them.
yeah. I mean, it's such an important conversation to have, and I think like it's kind of hard to like make this sound interesting uh, on the internet because everything is so like this is the best exercise for this, or like
Right.
training to failure is best, or like three reps in reserve is best. It's always like this or that, as opposed to like, well, like who or
Right.
when, like
Right. No,
this is like,
absolutely.
yeah, I think
But
it's just like it's generally good to be pragmatic with a lot of these things. And even if you have a strong opinion, same as what we were talking about politics earlier, you can have a strong opinion and you can be open to being wrong. I think that's important. Like I'm open to being wrong about a lot of things. Like principles are principles. My interpretation of those are not principles. That's my interpretation. How I use those, like that's my personal belief. I could be wrong about these things. Like, I
mhm.
like to think I have a pretty good supporting foundation of why I believe these things to be true. But also, like if I'm given new evidence, I would admit that I'm wrong. I'm open to trying new things,
Yep.
right? And I also understand the argument against a lot of things. Like there's a lot of things, like a lot of exercises that I don't have my clients do. Probably the same with nutrition, styles of training, et cetera, whatever you want to get into, that I may not personally like or use or find as most effective. But also, like if I were to sit here and you were like, Nick, give me an argument for this, I could still do it. I can
Right.
understand both sides, right? So I think that's
Mhm.
that's very important.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the key pieces of any, not that we're debating, but debate is the ability to, one, argue the other side, and then two, describe it to a 5-year-old or whatever that saying is, right? You don't want to, if you can only explain it on a high level from one side, you probably don't know enough about it. And so generally the message would be check yourself, right? Whereas if you're like, oh no, I'll go either way, whatever, let's go. Like, okay. And that's almost always a better conversation, right? It's one, it's more fun. Two, it's more interesting. And three, you learn way more, right? Because there's way more to be learned because you are both open and willing to learning,
Yeah,
right? Not interested in being right. I'm interested to hear where are you coming from,
yeah, I
you know?
like that. It's not even like so. It's like what's the saying? It's not about being right; it's about getting it right. I don't even necessarily like that. It's like it could also be just like, where are you coming from? It's like try
Yeah.
to have a general understanding because even at the end of the day, you may not be right. Like right,
Right.
right for a lot of these things, it's subjective.
Uh-huh. Well, and to go full circle around to who are you? Right back to the identity piece. It's like a lot of the time. Well, so this is a different question. I'll sidetrack myself. Are you someone who associates what you do with who you are in terms of identity?
Um, maybe to an extent. Like I think a lot of the things that I personally love and enjoy in this world, I combine with work. So that is like, me putting myself into my work. And
Right.
I would phrase it that way more than me putting my work into myself,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. Maybe I'm talking on my ass here. That's kind of the way that I would view it.
Yeah.
And I think that there's other things that I could do. Like if I just walked away from what I'm doing now, like I have other things that I enjoy. I can live life without it.
Right.
Right. So I don't think my identity fully fully contained by my work or reliant on my work, right? I would say more so my identity is reflected in my work, and I
Right.
could still be myself and do other things that have a reflection of that in other realms just fine.
I find, I guess where that comes from is I've never described myself as like in powerlifting. I never said I'm a powerlifter. I'm like, I enjoy powerlifting. With music, like guitar and music, huge part of my life. I have never said I'm a musician or I'm a guitar player, really. Like I enjoy playing guitar. I love music, but I don't, and I haven't really dived into this at all in my own psychology, but I'm not someone that says I am a coach,
I'm the same
or
way.
right. It's
I'm the
like
same way. I
I'm
fucking
just a
hate it.
fucking
I hate.
guy, you know?
Yeah.
Right. And so it's interesting, but I've never had a hard time walking away. Powerlifting, I walked away. Music would be harder, but like, you know, and I don't know if there's a degree of separation there on purpose in case, like with my health background, like if there comes a day where I can't do the things that I love, I don't want that to devastate me to the point where I'm fucked. Maybe has a piece of it, but at the same
Mhm.
time, it feels like flexibility. It feels like I can do the things that I love, and I'm very open to like sometimes you get to do them, sometimes you don't. There's less of that binary, right and wrong and this and that. It's like I'm just a fucking guy who likes doing stuff that I enjoy. Right. And so
Yeah.
the identity piece is kind of a weird one for me. It's like, who are you? And how do you describe yourself to a room of people who don't know you? Like, I have no idea what kind of answer that's going to bring out because there's so many ways for it to go.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I don't. I would say coming out with me. Figure out like let's spend some time together, and
It's
maybe hopefully through my actions and my words, you'll get a better idea of who I am, versus me
Mhm.
trying to like describe it or sell you on it. But I think like what you're describing is something that I can relate with as well. With like I played football until I was 21, 22, sports like that, but I didn't necessarily identify as a football player. So like when I
Right.
finished playing, it was less of a crisis in regards to me separating my identity from football, and more so like I don't think I really knew who I was. Like I was trying to figure out like, okay, can I do this thing that I really love? Can I do things that I love and combine it with my work? Uh, can I sit alone in a room and like think about my values and what I want from life, and how I see the world, stuff like that.
Mhm.
But I think like it was less like me tying my identity with football, but just like having to figure shit out. I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, is like getting asked this question and thinking about it.
Right.
Like anybody listening to this is probably like, okay, like, oh fuck, like if I have to answer this question, like who am I? That could be a question that you literally just sit alone for like 10 minutes a day and think about it for months
Right.
before you figure out like a great answer.
Hmm.
Or maybe like you spend your whole life trying to figure that out. To some
Yeah.
extent.
Yeah. No, well, because it always changes, right?
Yeah,
The target
exactly.
moves.
Huh? Yeah,
So,
yeah.
in terms of your values, like, what do you find I don't know if you'd say core values or in terms of your guiding principles to the world? Have you distilled them and like identified them?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have like a mission statement per se. Like I have it written down
Yeah.
on a whiteboard, but things I value a lot, like loyalty,
Hmm.
like family means a lot to me. Uh, Especially my grandparents had like a relatively small family, and they
Yep.
created like a pretty large family. Like I'm really lucky to have an awesome family that's pretty large. So like for me to like put that in perspective and look at like where they came from and the family they created, like that's something that I value a lot.
Right.
Um, integrity as a human being, like those are a lot of things that mean a lot to me. So like, and when I look at like a lot of my like closer friends, and I wouldn't say I have a large circle at all. Like it's a pretty small circle of who I like deem close to me. Like those are kind of the things that I see in them as well.
Hmm. No, it's interesting. Loyalty. Do you know where the loyalty comes from?
I mean, honestly, it could just come from my background in like sports and having close relationships and being like relying on people and,
Right.
at some points having people fuck you, being
For
in good
sure.
relationships, bad relationships too, outside of that, whether it's a friendship, whether it's an intimate relationship,
Hmm.
like that's just something that I've grown to value a lot.
Right. One of the things I find common in my list of values and the things that when I try to distill like what's guiding me forward, connection is one of the big ones for me. It's my desire to one, feel connected, but to also help facilitate the feeling of connection within someone else. Because I feel like
Yeah.
it's been a large piece of my life that I've sought that or desired that or almost, wanted to chase that because I haven't felt it. And so it's an interesting piece to me because if I can help cultivate that within someone else, I know the feeling it creates within me when I do it. So I just hope that it also creates it within them. And it's an energizing thing. I think it's a matter of resonance. If I can amplify your energy and you amplify mine and we both walk away different people, that's just fucking win all the way around.
Yeah. And that honestly, like even in my work, that's something that I kind of seek out now too, is like when you train people, especially in person, I spend more time with a lot of my clients than I do with my family,
Hmm.
than I do with my closest friends, because I see them for several hours a week.
Yeah.
Right. So like I don't want to be talking about like, oh, the McRibs back at McDonald's and who the Caps play, this weekend. Like I like to have people who want to connect and want to talk about deeper things and are interesting individuals. And I think that's something I value a lot as well.
Yeah. I guess to kind of pivot into things, how would you describe your relationship with death?
Oh yeah. So I guess
You take
we
a
we
hard
kind
left
of like
turn.
yeah, we kind of brushed over it earlier, I guess. I have no idea at what point we started recording this. I don't know
Yeah.
if we've been going the whole time or not. But yeah, so I haven't had any near death experiences, um, other than like I was born premature and going into
Mm,
labor, like they didn't think I was going to make it. So that 26 years ago now, being born 6 weeks early was like, or 8 weeks early was like a big deal. Like now I think you can be born like super early and still be just fine. But
yep.
like that was like a scary event for my parents. Like honestly, like every year on my birthday, I get perspective of that. I'm like, oh yeah, like like I could have not been born. Like I could have died in labor. But yeah, I mean, like I think personally, like my relationship with death, and kind of like talked about earlier, is like it's okay to have some anxiety around it. You ask yourself these questions, but it's also like it's inevitable, and it's okay to accept that. And we talked about religion. Like I'm a religious human being, and there's a lot of utility to that. It's something that I think I was exposed to. Like I lost both my grandfathers when I was like 12, 13,
Hmm.
uh, kind of in that age range. I got some good perspective from that. Like my grandfather always said, he was sick for over a year. He always said, like I want people to walk with my casket and look in and say, Benny lived a good life, you know? And like that was kind of his perspective on death. It wasn't like I'm scared of this. It's like I just want people to walk up and say, he lived a good life. And I think that's like a lot of the kind of the viewpoint that I look at life as well. It's like like I could die tomorrow. I could, Reagan International Airport's right next to me. A plane could fucking fly through my window right now and kill me. Like that just it is what it is. I
Sure.
could also live to be 90, like we don't know. Right. So I think there's perspective there from like we want to live a good life and live a long life, but also like we don't necessarily want to count on the fact that we're here for a long time either.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of that fuel to the fire thing, right? If there's no sense of urgency on things, I think it's off a TV show too. Anyways, I don't know. But if there's no sense of urgency to be alive, like you don't feel alive, right? There's a vibrancy in life that can be, I don't know, brought to life without a pun intended by having some sense of urgency. That adrenaline release and the cortisol and the stress hormones come to life when you're kind of on the clock.
Yeah.
Right now, obviously, you have to not worry, but be mindful of, jacking up your nervous system all day, every day to not have an allostatic load through the fucking roof. But it's like sometimes that fuel to the fire is really awesome. Like it's because really, even in terms of my life, what do you use for that fuel for energy, right? A lot of the times, uh, anger comes to mind. It's like anger is a very energizing emotion. Like there's almost infinite energy within anger, right? It's also a highly depleting, like it depletes your internal resources real fucking quick. So it's not a
Mhm.
long-term strategy. Now, obviously, cortisol is a complex hormone, but like in an acute setting, sometimes that can work, right? Because it comes up and comes down, and you get some shit done when it matters. But that ability to feel alive is a piece that I feel a lot of people are adverse to, that discomfort, right? It's that, I don't know, choosing to do something that you don't know the outcome of.
Yeah,
That can help you
yeah,
feel alive right now. And then how are you through that circumstance?
yeah. I think there's that. I think we can look at it like in different ways, right? We can look at like the cortisol standpoint of like not necessarily thrill, but things that will like spike those hormones.
Mhm.
And that gives us like perspective, right? Or we can look at it from like maybe I just like really enjoy music, or I really enjoy nature, or things that are like just like, beautiful things in general, right? And that
Yep.
gives you appreciation for life. Like holy shit, like humans made this, and you can like think about that in the grand scheme of things can give you perspective on life. And I think a lot of the time we're just like kind of numb to the world around us, and that we kind of just like are on autopilot and stuck in the rat race. But
Yeah.
like what like, what is appreciating life? Or having perspective that like life is a finite thing. I think a lot of those like this. I think it's just important to give yourself perspective. Um, maybe there's a balance there of like a more anxiety ridden perspective of like, oh shit,
Mhm.
like I could die tomorrow. Like I need to do X, Y, or Z, or I need to appreciate X, Y, or Z. Where it's just like the day to day like appreciation of like, oh, like this is cool.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm
Basically,
super,
this is sick. Right.
yeah, like this is
Yeah.
sick. Like holy, like this is sick to think about. Like I'm here right now. I can appreciate this beautiful thing in my life.
Mhm. Do you have like a daily, what comes to mind for me is every night I take the dog out at bedtime and I stand in the middle of the road in front of my house because they live kind of outside of a town. It's just dark, like it's dark and quiet, there's stars and everything. I stand in the middle of the road and I just talk to the sky for a little bit and like just breathe. I'm right on Lake Huron. And so there's fresh lake air blowing in off the lake all the time. And I just stand and I talk to myself and I say, this is fucking wild. Because there have been so many points in my life where one, I haven't been able to breathe on my own. Two, I haven't been able to stand up on my own. And three, I just stand in the middle of the fucking road at nighttime, just breathing in air. Like, how wild is it that I
Mhm.
can just choose to do this? I've got a little dog running around, peeing on everything, having a great time. Right? Like he's a constant reminder to me to be present because he's just the best dog that he can be all the time. And so how can I embody that myself within me? Like how do I be the best me that I can be all the time? And somehow I get
Yeah,
that from talking to my dog standing in the middle of the road at 11 o'clock at night before bed.
I love that you're a dog person. I
Yeah,
love dogs. I love dogs for the exact same reason.
they just love
Like I
life,
think
man.
yeah, I think that like if you appreciate that, it brings a lot of value to your life as well.
Hmm.
But I think for me, it's like a big reason why I love to travel is not because like I want to go to Greece and sit on a beach and relax. Like I just want to like enjoy the world and what's around us and this beautiful earth that we live in.
Yeah.
And for me, it's not like I'm just getting away from work. It's like I'm trying to appreciate these things. You know what I mean? Like this is sick.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and really truly meaning it, right? It's not this internal dialogue of, I should appreciate this. And they're telling me, if I want a more fulfilled life, then I will appreciate this and blah, blah, blah. You just wake up with this general, like, man, what a wild existence. I'm going to go have a day. Then you come back at the end of the day. And this has come up a lot lately too. Do you ever watch Bugs Bunny? Are you too young for that?
I've watched it a little bit. Yeah.
Right. So there's a sheepdog and there's a wolf, right? I think it's
Hmm.
Ralph and Sam or whatever, right? And every morning they walk in through the same place and they say, "Morning, Ralph, morning, Sam." And then they put down their shit and the wolf tries to eat the sheep all day and the sheepdog beats the shit out of them. And at the end of the day, they leave at the same place with their shit. They say, "See you in the morning, Ralph. See you in the morning, Sam," and they just go. So it's the same every day. They come in together and they leave together, and all day they fight. Where it's kind
Mhm.
of like I love that analogy for life in that every day when I wake up, it's like morning world. I have like, what's the wolf gonna do today? Like, I don't know, but there's always a wolf, and I'm kind of happy that there is because it gives me something to do. You know,
Yeah.
it's a focal point and a point of appreciation, so that at the end of the day, I feel like I did something, i.e., I protected the sheep, which I guess in this metaphor could be I'm still alive. That's great. That you see what tomorrow brings.
Yeah. No, that's great perspective. I mean, like that's the reason why like I like doing like I like getting up early.
Hmm.
I really don't enjoy getting up early. Like
You
if
do
I
get up
had
pretty
nothing to
early,
do, yeah, I wouldn't be getting up at like 4 in the morning, Monday through Friday, out of pure pleasure if I had no job or
right?
no work to do, right? Like it's just there's just like there's something enjoyable about doing hard things and like
Yeah.
your analogy, like, remind yourself, hey world, like what's going on today? What are you gonna do to me today? Like
Uh-huh.
what's in store?
Yeah, and on the backside of that, what value can I bring to the world around me today is a message I always run in my mind pretty indefinitely, just periodically. And I don't know, right? Because every day is different. Every interaction is different. Every conversation is different. And that value is very different, right? Person to person, situation to situation. That's one of the reasons I love it so much. It's because there's so much variety.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
I guess I'm going to go back in on another question I have. I believe we all have natural gifts that we bring to the world. What would you say are some of yours?
Yeah, I think the things that I'm naturally gifted in or more inclined to or things that I gravitated towards naturally, which were like I for some reason I really loved like anatomy, which I guess like wasn't random. Like I grew up loving sports.
Right,
Uh so like I wanted to optimize my training. I wanted to be the best athlete I could be. And to me that gave me like a fascination for the human body. And like I figured out that like, oh, like I'm really good at memorizing like random shit about the body, like
right,
anatomy and mechanics and whatever you want to get into there. So like, and even like when I went to school, I went to like a relatively like hard to get into school. Like there's a lot of smart kids around me that are way smarter than me, and they'd have a hard time with like anatomy or like things that I was like naturally better at. Like, oh, this is weird. If I go over to like
hmm,
the chemistry classroom, I fucking suck at this, and they're way better than I am. But when it comes to like just like basic anatomy, it's like the other way around. So I think like things like that, and honestly, like when I think about it, it's like, is it naturally inclined? Is it nature versus nurture? Like
hmm,
being able to communicate with others is something that I think like I'm pretty good at, and like having like what we call like basic people skills. Obviously, like I talk to people all day long.
right,
Like, that's what I do for a living, and then like training. But then when I go back and look at it, it's like, oh yeah, well, like I played sports for forever, and like on every team up until college, I was a captain.
hmm,
Like I had to be a leader of some sort, so I had to be an effective communicator to a variety of people. And maybe like I was naturally inclined to that. Like it was a natural gift, which made me kind of go into that role, or maybe a combination of that plus like I was just there at the right time, and that's something that like I developed through more of like a you know exposure, right?
right. Well, even what we talked about earlier too, in terms of um, the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? It's when you were looking, or when your team was looking for a captain, were you the best person to be the captain, or were you the most willing? Some combination of both. It's like, I'm the fucking guy right now. And you just took that position, right? And so, for better or worse, I'm not saying you're not a great captain, but sometimes it just takes someone to grab the fucking bull by the horns and say, I'm going to be the guy. And then now you're the leader, and that's a skill in itself. It's the ability, well, even what I'm hearing too, to go full circle, it's your confidence in yourself to figure it out when it matters is very high, right? Whether that's
Yeah,
football, whether that's training, whether that's business, say, I'm going to start and I'm going to figure it out as I go. Those are two truths.
yeah. But I think even with that, like that's something that I wouldn't say is like having high self confidence per se is not necessarily like natural.
Sure.
Like, a lot of it's like something that I've had to like I've had to grow, as I've gotten into different endeavors in life. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, like I need to figure shit out. But like I think it certainly helps a lot too to be self-confident when you surround yourself with people that are going to be, supportive of you,
Mhm.
which is what I was getting into earlier. Was like when I started my training career, like I surrounded myself with brilliant guys like Shallow and Killian and et al. I had a lot of friends with like, okay, I don't need to know the answer to all these things. Like I have people around me that can help me,
Yep.
right? So like I can
Yeah.
outsource a lot of the things, like things that I'm not confident about. It's okay. I can ask somebody else. And also like it's okay. It's like instead of like I think a lot of people like run away from like it's like if you're not confident about something, you can usually like pinpoint why you're not confident.
Mhm.
And a lot of people want to lean away from that. I think I kind of took the perspective or the angle of like I want to lean into this and figure out why I'm not confident or like, why I don't feel comfortable with it. And then if I can fix it, like I'll fix it. Especially if it's like something it's like from like looking at like your skill set. Okay, like, why am I bad at this? Why am I uncomfortable with this? And how can I fix that? Can I fix that even? That's something that I need to work around. Is it
Right.
something that will just get better through experience? Something that can be answered with a simple question to a friend,
Yeah, and not be too caught in your ego to ask a question to somebody else, right? There's accountability piece to yourself to not get in your own way. Like to say, I don't know. Well, even go back to our tribal conversation earlier too about how we're tribal beings, right? People as humans, we're more maybe naturally inclined to work in that community setting and having that ability to lean on the people in your corner for the things that you're less strong in, right? Whatever they are. Um, well, and there's the basis of community in itself, right? We're not all freestanding buildings, right? We are a stronger structure when we stand together.
Yeah, I think this ties in a lot too. I mean, you'll see a lot of like men's mental health in general, especially in the US, is like very bad right now.
Yeah.
Probably in most developed nations in the world. I think a lot of that's like low self-confidence and a lot of that even is like we just don't have many role models. So if you don't have role models and not people in your corner, to support you and help you along the way, then like yeah, it's like it's gonna be hard to be confident in yourself, right?
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I see sometimes, and this could just be like an online is not the place to go for therapy, and it's definitely not Instagram, right? But
Right.
the concept where like some trains of thought are to treat men's mental health the same as women's mental health. And I really do agree with some of it in the sense that more times than not, I can't speak for women, but for the men that I talk to, it's action-based solutions, right? It's like I don't need to talk about it 1,000 times to know what's going on. What I need to know is how do I operate or what do I need to choose differently in order to have a different outcome, right? It's a solution-based thing versus I just need to lighten the load by, you know, offloading my thoughts and then I'll feel better. It's like, but I don't because I still feel like I need to do something. And so let's find the things that we need to do so that we can then offload this feeling of stress or this weight, right? So it's kind of an interesting, I don't know. Well, that's one of the reasons I love psychology. It's because it's never the same thing, but it's almost always very common. Like there's common themes through all of them. So how do we find or pull that thread to see which is helpful in this situation?
Yeah, no, I agree entirely. What you're describing is like every relationship I've ever been in as well.
Right.
Like,
Right.
two different like finding solutions to problems. Like do you want comfort or stress relief, or do you want like actionable solutions? And there's not necessarily that one is better than the other. But
Yeah.
like for an individual, it might be, and I think that goes into like, especially if you're talking about like connecting with others and building relationships, like understanding that like your way of doing things makes you feel better. It may not be what's best for the person that you're talking with, right?
Yep. Well, and specifically with like male female relationships, that's the conversation I've had many times as well too, is this idea that there are three potential options. We as men see two, and women generally want the third one that we don't know exists, right? And so one option is if you come to me with a problem and you're telling me, that means one of two things. The first one could be you want me to help solve it with you or for you. The second one is you're coming to bitch at me because I did something that you don't like, or you want me to change my pattern, right?
Mhm.
Those are the two. The third option that generally men don't really need or care about, but oftentimes women do, is I need you to listen to the shit that I have on my mind and tell me that everything's okay and shut the fuck up. That's it. Right. And so as men, a lot of time we're like, well, that doesn't help. And so what else do you want? I'm either fucking up. So we keep looking for where did I fuck up or how do I help her? Whereas the woman is just like, why do you stop or continue trying to solve my problems? I'm not asking you to, blah, blah, blah. It's like, just fucking shut up and listen. And if they're your significant other, do a little grab on the backside and carry on with the day. And that's the ideal outcome, right? But we don't even know it exists. And so we have this constant frustration of interacting.
You're so spot on, man. Like, I wish that somebody would have just like told me this when I was 18. You know,
Right. Yeah.
like, hey man, this
Yeah.
is how relationships are probably going to work for you. Like, oh,
Uh-huh.
okay, like, this is
And
actually very,
like,
very helpful.
not a rule of thumb forever, but it's definitely
No,
like a 70-30, right? It's like more times than not, this will steer you in the right direction versus the wrong direction, right? If you stand and listen, the chances of them getting angry at you are much less than if you stand and try to solve their problem for the next 5 hours, right? It's a known outcome.
yeah,
Yeah, man.
that's such a difficult transition for me because like I'm such a like solution driven individual. Like if there's a
Right.
problem and you're asking them, oh, okay, I'm gonna help you, right? You want me to give you a solution. That's like who I am. So like for me to like stop that,
Yeah.
just like shut up and listen.
Uh-huh.
Like honestly, it's helped me do a lot with work because this is like half what I do every day is
Right.
I have people coming to me and they're complaining to me about their problems or they're telling me about their lives and half the time they don't want a solution from me. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they'll ask my
Yeah.
advice, but a lot of times they come in, they ask better, ask questions and show interest in them and they want to talk about it and they feel way better to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like thanks, Nick. Like there was no actionable takeaway, but they feel better because they actually
Mm.
express their feelings.
I do. And people, it can be hard to find someone that you can be open and honest with and not fear judgment. I feel like that's a, a,
Yeah.
a key piece to coaching in general. Um, it's that your clients know that you are not going to judge them for what they say or do, right? Within the context of the training or the session or whatever it is.
Yeah. That's something that I try to build right away with clients. I'm like,
100%.
look, I'm not here to judge, I'm here to help.
Yep.
Right? I'm like, I'm not gonna judge you, but like, if I can give you some input that's gonna help you, I'm gonna help you.
Yeah.
If like like and honestly, like with a lot of the things that they're afraid of being judged on too, like they know they fucked up. They don't need me to tell them they fucked up too. Or if like
Yep.
somebody's 300 pounds and they need to lose some weight, like they don't need me to tell them that they're 300 pounds and need to lose weight, right?
Yeah. So how? It's like, what do I do about it? You showed up.
Yeah,
Step one, you're doing great.
yeah. Step two is like for a lot of them is even like what acknowledging it. Like
Yeah.
they know it, but they're not willing to talk with you about it.
Hmm.
Literally today I had a conversation about this with a client who's very very overweight. I've trained for almost a year now, and for the first time ever, they told me their weight,
Yep.
and they're like, "I need to lose this." I'm like, "We know this, right? We don't need to talk about this. Like
Yep.
we can acknowledge this, right? I'm very appreciative that you're willing to share this with me now, but like we know what to do. It's very practical. We walked through it, and they felt really good about it.
Yeah. Well, they're empowered, right? There's something we can do about it. And there it is.
Yeah.
What's something or what's the most fun or interesting thing you've learned in the past year? And do you have any concepts or ideas you've changed your mind on recently?
Oh man, the most interesting thing I've learned in the past year. See, this is what like the only question that I saw in there that I was like, oh man, I really need to spend some more time to think about this one. I think a lot of it in a way is stuff that we've already talked about. I'm in the
Mm,
DC area. I don't think I gave myself
yep.
a proper introduction, but like people that I train are like relatively involved in like the DC inner circle to an extent to where like I hear like I get more of an inside scoop on politics, corporations, etc. I think just like the more that I hear about this stuff, the more of an open mind I have about like, being less binary with my decision making on, you know, who I support for things that I believe. Or it's like, okay, you know,
Mhm.
maybe there's some better questions to ask here. Maybe this isn't such a black and white thing. Um, from an interesting standpoint, I don't know, man. What's the most? Hey, I'm gonna put this on you. What's the most interesting thing you've learned this year?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a tough one. I haven't spent any time thinking about it, honestly. What's coming to mind? Um, well, one thing, so last year I did that fundraiser for Sick Kids Hospital. I very much enjoyed it, and I was reminded that it's very draining for me to do a public speaking event. I'm not at that point yet to stand out confidently on a regular basis. Like I very time intensive in terms of preparation. And so one of the things on my mind for potentially for this year was to do more public speaking. That's not on my list of things anymore. Like I would still like to do more of it at some point. Um, and honestly, I'm kind of doing a different, I pivoted a bit. So this community group I'm starting in Goderich here, uh, on a small scale, right? There could be 6 or 12 people in a room, and I'm just there to facilitate a thing. With that type
Mhm.
of speaking is really kind of where I'm leaning towards, less so than like go to a room of 50 or 100 people and present. So I'd like to be able to practice on the fly public speaking. I don't know about the scale of that yet, but that's, I guess, an interesting thing to learn about myself. Is I thought I wanted to do more public speaking. I don't know that I do in a formal setting anyway.
Isn't it funny how that works once you get some exposure to it?
Yeah.
There's a time where like I have some clients that own gyms that wanted me to come do like a workshop for them. We talked about it, kind of kicked the can around, something I was excited about. But the more I've like gotten into this, the more I'm like, I don't know how much I would actually like just love doing that myself.
Hmm.
Uh, now that I just started working for Prescript and getting more involved with that, I'll get to do it in the capacity to which I think I do really enjoy going to those events and like helping teach at those events. But like, I'm not
100%.
sure that I want to be the one that's like fully responsible for curating everything, making sure everything runs smoothly. Like you said, it's exhausting. It's just a lot of logistics to handle.
Yeah, man.
And like,
It's the
it's
prep.
it's a pivot, right? It's like,
Yeah.
but like for you as a pivot, it's like okay, like there's components of this that I do like. There's like a lot of components that I do like, but like maybe I can just pivot this into something else that I'll enjoy more and that I can do more often and help more people. Which to
Yep.
you is like your small group thing, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's that way. It's still, I like group dynamics is something that I
Mhm.
know. And
Yeah.
so it's just how do I facilitate that group and interact within that group? But yeah, so in the group setting, I would say that's the thing that I've learned is that I want to pivot in what I'm doing there and shift my focus a bit. Um, but otherwise, like information wise, nothing really comes to mind. I'm not good at recollection really in terms of like learn a new piece of information a week ago and regurgitate it today. That's not something I'm very good at or haven't been anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I guess like there's probably things we could pull out of a hat, something cool we
Right.
learned, but it's not that cool.
Right.
Like I think we both value the word cool, I guess. Like, what's something cool or interesting to talk about? It's like
Right.
talk about
Yeah.
like
And
fucking
no,
go
go ahead.
ahead, go ahead.
No, I
I
was
was
just gonna
just gonna
say,
say I could talk about like
reminded of your living in DC and talking to the inner circle people. Like, there's probably lots of cool shit going on, right? It's whether or not it's directly applicable to you in your life, but it's just an interesting little tidbit in your day.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's usually interesting stuff or like, comments about certain people that I can't share publicly.
Right. Sure. And that's one thing about the online training space specifically too, is there's, as you called it earlier, the corners of the internet. You kind of have to just be mindful of they only exist if you go to them. It's like otherwise that shit just isn't real. Like it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, no, exactly. I
Yeah,
think the longer I'm on the internet, the less I care about it, which is good. You detach yourself. My
absolutely.
thing is like people are like, oh, how do you post content so regularly? Like, aren't you worried people think about you? I'm like, no, I don't care at all because I don't think anybody else cares. Like the
Mm.
people who care about what I do are the ones who support me or have conversations with me or you like pay me, right? Anybody
Yeah.
who comments like, you small bitch, like go train your arms pussy, like I don't, I don't care.
Right.
Think about like how bad someone's day or their life must be going to comment that on my post. It's like,
Right.
like I can't get upset about that.
Well, and that goes into like this the whole concept of being distracted from ourselves, right? A lot of the times people don't want to sit in silence by themselves to ask the questions of like, who am I as a person? Like they are very uncomfortable with those things. And generally those are the people who engage in, especially like in things like COVID and all this bullshit in the world, like there's these strong opinions on both sides of things. And like the more time you spend on the internet typing about them, it's not even talking about them, right? It's literally typing with your two fucking thumbs about the bullshit that doesn't matter really. Like all that says to me is that you, one, don't have enough going on in your day-to-day life that you actually enjoy, and enough that's engaging to you. Like even in talking to Bulgaria, he's like, you very realize very quickly that shit doesn't matter when your priorities are very clear, right? And so when
Mhm.
your priorities are less clear, you have a much higher capacity for all the shit that doesn't make any difference in the world, i.e., whether I wear a mask or not, or whether someone believes this about, XYZ. It's like, who fucking gives a shit? It's like it's
Yeah.
not real.
No, I think you have to care about things. And if you don't have very important things to care about, you're going to care about less important things. That's kind of like, you can
Yep.
only fill the bowl with so much water before it spills
Yeah.
over. And like if it's full of, positive, you know, things, then you're probably not going to care too much about, who's wearing a mask and, lesser things that you just said. But if it's not
Yeah.
very full of those things, you're going to start putting more of that stuff in there. And like that's your little bowl of values. It's, you know,
It's yeah, mic drop, right? That's just it. If you don't care about important things, you're gonna care about less important things. It's yeah.
yeah,
Because we all just want to be stressed for some reason. If you don't have enough stress in your day, you just create more. It's one of those things. Why
yeah,
don't people do that with more things that are more fun?
yeah. I don't get it, man. I don't know.
Excuse me. Um, so one of the things I like to ask at the end of the podcast, uh, everyone really is they say that what has got you to where you are isn't what's going to get you to where you want to go. And so with that, I'd love to hear about how your internal dialogue has been shifting lately and how you see it shaping as you move forward into this next chapter of your life.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like a lot of the things I've gotten me where I am are things that I believe are gonna propel me, further in the direction I want to go to. I think a lot of it's like core values, habits,
Sure.
things that make you successful at what you do, and a lot of the things we've already talked about in terms of like just like having delayed gratification, like surrounding yourself with people who can help you, are supportive of you, good friends, stuff like that.
Yep.
And I think that's like something that's like ever changing, and you kind of pivot your view on some of those things and your approach and your actions. Like even for example, what you're saying with like public speaking and pivoting out to something else. It's like I could do the same thing with some of my values, some of my core actions. I could do little tweaks here and there, but I think for the most part, like the things that give you success, they're probably going to be cross applicable to other endeavors as well, or even like keep continuing to build upon the current one.
Right. Yeah. Thinking in terms of a value system or a principle system versus an action system. Yeah.
Yeah. And even like the understanding that there's some overlap, right? Like,
100%. Yeah. It's kind of like that. If this, then that, thinking if these are my guiding principles, then my actions are going to probably be at least within a certain scope anyways, versus like, well, and even to go full into religion and stuff too, if you use the Bible as your North Star, like your decision-making process will likely all fall underneath this religious text, uh, and commitments and beliefs and these types of things, right? It's part of the identity piece.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I guess so. My last question for you in general is you're grabbing one pair of J's. Which ones are you wearing?
Dude, this might have been all the talk about, relationships with death and religion and all the stuff we got into just now. This might be the hardest question. Uh, I think it's probably gonna have to be the cement threes.
Cement threes.
Yeah,
I'll have to look them up. I have no idea
that
what
might
they
have
are,
to
man.
be it. Yeah, that's probably my go-to right now.
Are they hard to get?
They're not too hard to get. Not
Okay,
nothing absurd. Yeah, they're a good pair
nice.
to have though. Yeah.
Classic. Uh, are you taking on clients? How do you like people to get a hold of you? What do you have to, anything to promote, that kind of stuff?
Sure, yeah. If you want to talk more about training or any of the stuff that we just talked about with me, you can find me on Instagram at Nick Ridpath, maybe an underscore in there at the end. I'm on YouTube. Online coaching, I'm always taking on clients. I haven't gotten to the point where I've never been like, oh, this is too much. In person, not so much. But yeah, if you want to work with me online, talk more about training, any of that stuff, just reach out, set something up.
No, that's sweet. And you actually, this just came to mind too. For the longest time, I thought you had doctor in your Instagram handle. And I don't know why. It's just my inability to read sometimes, I guess. But I remember I met you in Burlington there. And then after the fact, I was trying to find you on Instagram and I couldn't find you because I kept typing in Dr. Nick, well, not the Simpsons reference, right? But that was in
Hmm.
my thing. I'm like, yo, I know this guy's a real person because he just drove around in my car. Like,
Right.
why is he not? He didn't just block me. Anyway, it took me a long time to find you again. And then I finally realized there's no doctor in front of your name. I'm like, where did that even come from in my mind?
That's hilarious. I could have been. I used my handle used to be like I think it was like Nick Ridpath PT, like personal
Okay.
trainer,
Right.
and maybe people associate that with physical therapist. That's part of why I
I don't know.
changed it. But also,
Uh,
I just yeah. Anyways, it could have been that. It could have just been my association with doctors. I don't know.
right. True. I did meet you through Jordan, so who knows?
Yeah,
But and also as a final note, happy birthday.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
man. You got any big plans?
Going to my favorite sushi spot tonight. That's
You
about it. Eating
fucking
some
slam
cake.
dunk.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Beautiful.